Okay. So start and stop, where we have defined the start service and stop service, and as I told, it's a thread safe environment. Doesn't create duplicate instance if already started activity again called for start activity, and same applies for stop. So once stop is called, it permanently stops, and hitting multiple time it won't make any execution error or exception errors. So right now we have a small counter which prints increment the number in every 2 seconds. Some value is being incremented. So from this code I can very clearly say yes, there is a service which execute the timer, and there is a broadcast receiver. Of course, this broadcast receiver independently, or it has been defined as a different class or independent class, so that has an entry in manifest, and the activity which takes the input from from broadcast receiver, because the broadcast receiver locally implemented here. I mean an object has been initialized, and that broadcast receiver has got registered with the activity, or activity has got registered with the broadcast receiver. This intent filter, as I said, it is to attach with one particular action, or if you want to say as a channel, whatever it may be. So it just get attached to it and register with the particular receiver. So any message comes through this particular action would be retrieved and can be displayed here. I also have a key or placeholder for retrieving the value of I, or particular value which is getting incremented. So every 2 seconds this block will have a on receive method called, and naturally the text view will be updated. So I felt text view updating is not going to take a longer time, that's why I directly defined here. If there are anything different or which is going to access more memory, we may not put them. And also, if you notice, in manifest I have some kind of exporter receiver does not require permission. Already the permission thing has already come. I purposefully left it. Now I would be fixing that once I start writing, or once I go ahead on the further example. Now I am going to create another application or another project where there is not going to be any service, but still it can receive this particular counter values. I'm going to have one broadcast receiver which is going to listen the same intent filter action, but it won't have a service. In order to tell anyone who has got attached to a particular action can receive any intents coming from that broadcaster. So let me create one project. See, I'm going to say mock PG counter. It's going to mock as if some counter is there. I'm just done with the default project creation. As usual, one activity is there. So what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to keep any buttons here, but only thing I'm going to keep a text view which will still receive the update from a service which is defined in some other application. I know this application has been created and installed as a BG counter, whereas this application is going to be mock BG counter, different application, but still it can receive updates from some other application. So let me put a text view. I sincerely don't like relative layout now. Let it be. This will push it to center. Going to define ID for this. Some name, so I don't remember, so I just put a mock counter. Defining the text view here. I also need an instance of a broadcast receiver. Any name. So of course I need an intent filter so that I can define an action. Intent, sorry. So filter, add action. You can add an action, you can also attach a category. An action category almost more or less same, but action tells it is trying to perform an action. It is literal understanding, there is no significance. You could have noticed in manifest while we defined the activity, the very first activity had two intent filter values defined. One is action, another one is category. So action is something like you want to view a photo, you want to get a message. So something an action, so you can give a little understandable string for action. A category which you want to separate or maybe additional information you want to give that particular action. But category may not be mandatory. Of course, that also you can keep it. But as this example, I do not see any requirement. I need to know the action name so that I can receive any messages coming from that action. So in the BG counter, the action name is defined as counter action and the value. So I may need this because the exact same name I need. Same name means same value. Some name. But this you should not change because that should match with the same. Register receiver and the filter. The mock counter, I want it to be a global. First need to check if bundle is not empty. So an integer value is actually coming, so I'm going to attach them. Mock counter, set text, that also I need the particular string which the particular value is landing here. So I go to main activity here, so it is called underscore count. I don't want to have this it's too much of constants, so I'll do one thing, I'll directly define it here. You can define as a constant and call it, but since just an example, I just skip this particular step. So it has attached to the particular action, and the same action, because the action name contains the same of some application which is broadcasting a message. Now it can receive it irrespective of a specific service installed in this app. If you register for a service, make sure you also unregister it when application gets closed. Destroys there. There's a global space. Okay, everything is done. Okay, so I'm done with that. Since it is registered through activity itself, I don't need to define anything in manifest. So I'm going to run this code, making sure this code is already running. I'm running a different application. Remember, this application is called mock BG counter. If you notice, this application is also printing the values, and it is also increments every 2 seconds some incremental value with the same value of some other application which is broadcasting some value. So the behavior of broadcast receiver is quite global. It not only within your application, it goes out of your application also. And that makes a huge difference between the internal sub process of other classes such as activity and service. An activity or service which is a process inside of a particular application, and whereas the broadcast receiver is defined, it gets registered in the Android system itself, so it easily interacts with other processes such as maybe outside of your applications also. This particular application does not have any service, but it received the message from a broadcast receiver by this particular application. If I stop it, that will also will stop. So where's that? Of course it does, because I closed it and one minute it reset. I think if I have a phone, I can see the recently opened app. That will show me. I can switch between a different app. Now I cannot do. All I can do is starting it, closing it. and this receives it. So a broadcast receiver can broadcast any information depending on the intent filter action associated. If the action is public, or if you say to some other application, usually it is not possible because every application is developed by various vendors or various clients, nobody will share it. But some instance, if you want to share it, or you have your own application which is already installed, you are writing another application which has a dependency over the another application, you can use the same intent filter in order to receive the data. And also you can restrict that also. So that also I'm going to do it. For example, this is already showing error. I can create some what I call permission objects or permission scenario. I can create my own permission and force the other application to use the same permission. If they do not get call the same permission, your broadcast receiver message cannot be caught. It's not only restricted to broadcast receiver, a permission scenario would be applicable for every instance, maybe for activity also. I mean, if the activity is trying to access something, a privacy related one. So let me see. I'm going to create, I call the tag called permission. Remember, I am in a BG counter manifest, the previous application. I'm defining a permission scenario, say something. See, I give this kind of a unique combination because it looks like Android is following similar pattern. So I just try to replicate it, but there is no kind of guidance you should use this way. I try to use in this format because I'm slightly inspired by the existing action name and the category name. Level also you can specify. For example, there should be protection level. There are various protection level: normal, dangerous, system, signature. Uh, this is slightly dependable on the hardware configuration. I'm going to go with the normal, but if you want to say it is dangerous while the application is installed, it will be highlighted in a slightly and a different way, stating that some dangerous process it is going to access. It may throw some error for that purpose. Signature is something like, it need a signature or it need a certificate from the vendor who has customized the Android. For example, Samsung. If you force it to signature, mean if anyone try to access this permission should have a valid certificate from Samsung. Of course, only Samsung can access it. So Samsung may have their valid signature created and they will create their own broadcast receiver. They will share among themselves only. They won't allow to other people to be accessed. I'm going to keep it normal. I can say label means some external text which I want to display. Something. So this is a permission object I create. This is a custom permission. I mean, I create my own permission. I create my own rules. So this permission is needed for this. Of course, this is only for declaration, and you need to call users permission, stating that this particular app is making use of this particular permission. This may not be mandatory, but stating thus the whole application has permission to access the BG counter. And in broadcast receiver also, I can define a permission. Instead of having declared it globally, we want to say only the broadcast receiver has this permission, not others. That also you can do it. See, remember the warning has disappeared now already. This is only a broadcast receiver instance which is defined as an external class. Now I'm going to lock everything. In the service only, the broadcaster is sending the broadcasted information outside. I'm going to use a overloaded method of send broadcast. If you notice, there is two arguments available. Before I was using the first one and second one I'm going to use. So intent and the permission. It's mean I'm sending the information, but only with the given permission somebody has, then they can only receive the information. So what is the permission string name I gave? This one. It is better to define in strings file and call it, not to hard code this way. Here. So anyone who is holding this permission can only receive the counter update. Now it is restricted. Let me run the code now. I'm running the BG code, BG counter code. I'm going to hit start. Of course, this started working, but if you notice, this guy stopped working. It doesn't update now because I restricted it. This particular application does not have a permission to access the counter now. If you check the log, clearly it tells permission denial. Access due to sender, I think that one permission name, require permission, Dev's permission to access, some permission needed. Otherwise, this particular broadcast receiver instance or values cannot be. This toast is coming from a other application, the previous application. But this application now does not have any permission to access the counter. In order to get the updated values, it also need to get the permission. So I can do and go to manifest stating that the same permission is needed. So now the whole application has a permission to access the broadcast receiver values, because the broadcast receiver right now defined as an inner class. So now I reload this application. Now it is getting the updates. So a kind of restriction also I can create. A permission is a kind of indication where the user gets notified before installing the application. Right now the installation process is done by Eclipse itself, so you do not see that screen. But typically if you want to install through App Store, you will be given a permission screen. You might have noticed, if you install an application, you will first say this application will access this one, that one, that one, the various list will come. So in that list my application also will be listed. So if you try to access this, this manifest already saying something, so you need this permission to access BG counter, that will be displayed over there. If the user feels that is kind of a violation, he better won't install the application, quit there itself. Or if he says okay, use that permission mean, then he will go ahead, the application will install and will be used. It is maybe for a legal formalities or how the Android treats the privacy policy. But Android has permissions or anything restricted using the explicit user permission access. And of course you can also create one permission stating that, defining that inside a permission tag. it is a custom permission. There are already existing or predefined permissions also there. uh, I mean system specific permissions. I want to show that. See, there are list of bunch of permissions. Name itself very clearly tell find location, course location is all GPS stuff. Network state mean you want to access internet state, Wi-Fi state. Account manager, you want to access the user particular account, maybe a Gmail account associated. You want to read the battery state, and there are, if you notice, there are various permissions are there. Calling a phone, camera, I want to access camera. These are all system specific permissions. Mean if you are accessing any application which is already there, you have to get the permissions so that it could be explicitly displayed to the user. And send, receive, there should be a internet permission. This we will be quite often be using that, because if you want to access internet, so there are various permissions are there. These permissions are system defined permissions, whereas we created our user defined permission. So user defined permission should have a permission tag, meaning you are declaring a permission here. Here you are getting the permission of the particular access or whatever. So you have to have it. If you notice, if I do not define this one for the BG counter app, because you may be wondering, I already defined it, but you did not call the user's permission, meaning the particular permission is being used by this application. So if you do not define that, you may see the difference once I run the code. I'm going to run the BG counter because there only I revoked the permission. Now if I click start, the counter does not, what do you call, the counter does not update. It means very clearly saying that the whole instance of the broadcast receiver itself, the particular application could not receive it. If you see, the log would be printing the permission denial or anything. The beauty of thing is the other application receiving the update, because that application has the proper permission. So having the permission is very important for certain user privacy specific or system specific processor. If you are accessing, make sure you get the required permission defined under users permission. If you have your own custom defined permission, declare that under the permission tag. We are going to use most of the system defined permission only mostly hereafter. This is only for example I showed. This is also possible to have a two different application which access the resource of one application to another. So that you can create your own customized permission, but we will be mostly using system defined permissions hereafter, because as I said, the next example I want to talk on SMS. I gave an interesting scenario. I want to create a small SMS replier, automatic SMS replier app project, or maybe an app. So when somebody not calling, of course, when somebody send a message, it will automatically reply. Of course, we can extend it. If somebody calls me also, it will send SMS. That also we will do it as we progress. So using the broadcast receiver, I am going to achieve that task. But for that, I may need to get system specific firm permission, because I'm going to use SMS feature. Sending, receiving SMS through program is going to cost a user who actually installed the application. So it is explicit permission has to be granted. So that I would be writing in the forthcoming examples. As of now, you need to understand a broadcast receiver is a kind of a process, a daemon process. The particular message or broadcasting is sent across the entire Android system, not only restricted within your application. We also wrote a mock BG counter where it does not even have a service, but still it could get a update from a service defined in some other application through broadcast receiver. The only requirement is you need to make sure both are attached to a same action defined under intent filter. An action or permission or anything in Android usually a string value which is combination of a unique parameters. So this could be kept secure. Other than that, it is quite familiar because we already seen intent filter action defined here. This is a system kind of object or system value, whatever it is. But whereas we have created our own. The naming convention I followed, so it may sound like or as if a system one, but you may have any naming convention. It could be any name. I won't recommend space. This could be any combination of string, but having unique always helps for your protection of the particular broadcast receiver. Otherwise, no problem if you want to use a customized one. So this is how a broadcast receiver works. I'll post the source code. Hopefully you guys have completed the previous exercises. If not, make sure you complete it. After the break, I will write one small app. Of course, I'm going to write the broadcast receiver only, where I'm going to write something for our, that's a one thing, SMS replier. So it's going to reply the SMS quite automatically using the broadcast receiver. I'm also going to explain how to access the incoming SMS also. So how to access the incoming SMS, how to read it, and accordingly how to reply it. The message, of course, the particular messaging broadcast receiver, you already have a inbuilt messaging application that will also receive the SMS, and your application also will receive SMS, stating that a broadcast receiver information can be accessed by multiple applications. We have already seen the example here. So any SMS comes, SMS defined, and the broadcast receiver will get notified. On receive method will be called, and anyone who access to the same SMS broadcast intent action, they can receive it. So we are going to see them maybe after the break. I will post the source codes to developer portal.